Hello, how's everyone doing today?
Doing great.
Good.
Oh,
Yeah, I just had a little problem on my end. Sorry for that. Yeah, we can get started pretty quick here. So I guess the best way to start is maybe we could all introduce ourselves, unless Austin already did that.
No, he hasn't done that yet.
Okay, perfect. Let's go. Yeah, let's just start off right off the bat. Let's go introduce ourselves, what we do now, where we were back in late 2017, how we got involved with NFTs, and is it nifty, nifties? How do you say it? How do you pronounce NFT? You have to. You can't stay neutral on this one.
Sure, I'll go first. Thanks so much for moderating, Jay. Great to meet you in person, or at least live, I should say. I mean, I'm Dieter Shirley. I'm the CTO of Dapper Labs and the chief architect of the Flow blockchain. But of course, I'm here today because I was the creator of EIP721 that became ERC721. When Austin reached out to me to talk about the origins of the OGNFT, right, as a topic, I wanted to get these 5 other people talking because I feel like I owe them a debt of gratitude, because before CryptoKitties launched, no one cared about NFTs, but these guys did, and they all jumped in and they commented, and Doug actually created some precursor work, and so I just wanted to make sure that they were here to tell their part of the story of ERC721, and as Austin intimated, sort of like what they thought in those early days, what this could all mean. And so I think I'll hand intros off to Doug, because he was actually, I think, the first person I reached out to after I posted EIP 721, because I'd seen his previous work with Auction House.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Jay, for hosting. I'm Doug Picanics. What I do now is I'm the founder of a video infrastructure streaming protocol in Web3 called LivePeer. And even back when CryptoKitties launched in 2017, I was working on LivePeer at the time. But a year before that, and as Dee mentioned, why I'm here is because I kind of the first project that I built in the Ethereum space was this open protocol, this open application called Auction House, which was this on-chain auction protocol for non-fungible unique goods, or NFUGs, as I called them. And at the time, we knew that this was going to be something super interesting and exciting, and there was going to be a need to exchange these things on-chain that were unique, that were not fungible tokens. But there were no NFTs in existence yet. So what did we do? We created the simplest possible version of something that Nick had been working on forever with ENS and domain names. We created the world's prototype simplest domain name registration to actually have some non-fungible unique goods that could be auctioned through the Auction House protocol. We opened up this prototype on, I think, the Morden testnet at the time, and put out a call for feedback, for input on how these things should work. And I'm so glad that everyone here kind of picked up that call to action, and a few months or a year later, we had 721 and the explosion of all the exciting stuff that came from it.
Awesome. I'm just going to remind everyone as we go through the introductions, let's kind of keep this a little more of a tweet length, because I want to get to the discussion.
I guess I'll go next, since I was name dropped. I'm Nick Johnson. I was, at the time of 721, the lead EIP editor, and also involved with ENS, the Ethereum name service, which made it doubly relevant to me. So I offered some feedback on 721, and also was one of the winners of the bug bounty when CryptoKitties launched, and got myself a very nice special CryptoKitty for that. And I think they're mostly called NFTs, but I've always had a soft spot for the word nifty.
There we go. We have one holdout for nifty.
Well, I guess I will go next. My name is Esteban, and at the time in 2017, I was drafting the land contract for the Centerland, and yeah, it never occurred to me until Dieter showed up and said, "Hey, we should standardize this." It was very few of us at the time, and yeah, I was super happy to collaborate on that.
I can continue if you want. I'm Jordi Bailina. At that time, I was working a lot in the EIP777. Was like an extension of the fungible token of the ERC20. But I was collaborating a lot in the EIPs, in the ERCs part. So we're talking a lot in the ENS, well, in the that word is retrospective. The one that the contract that defines what functions they have, and I don't remember the name. It was retrospective, introspective or something like that. Introspection and all that stuff. So I was collaborating on that side, and yeah, just trying to standardize at that point. And yeah, and right now I'm just in Hermes, just doing scalability things and other not related to NFT things.
And do we want? Oh, go ahead.
I guess that we still need Will, right?
Yeah, I don't know if Will looks frozen. I'm not sure if he's managed to stay connected or not.
Will, if you're able to introduce yourself, do so when you come back on. Otherwise, we are going to move forward. And everyone's had a chance to introduce themselves then?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to open up the discussion. Looking at the official spec, back when it was actually officially defined in EIP 721 for the ERC 721, the official spec defines NFTs as A, physical property, houses unique artwork, etc. B, virtual collectibles, unique pictures, kittens, collectibles, cards. C, negative value assets, loans, burdens, and other responsibilities. Is it fair to say that the eventual use cases have differed from the implementation of the standard?
Very much so, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
There were a few things people had in mind, but I think some of them people definitely didn't predict, like going way out there, things like Uniswap v3 liquidity tokens, and some things were much less or more important than we thought. I haven't seen any negative value tokens, and I haven't seen many tokens that represent physical things, but NFT art, of course, has become huge.
Do you think we'll start to see those physicalities? I mean, it seems fairly hard to build those incentives.
Yeah, it's something I've played around with a little bit before, and the really big problem is keeping the physical object tied to the NFT so that whoever acquires the physical object can always claim the NFT. And there are ways around that are sort of akin to a hardware wallet that's sort of super glued into the object, but none of them are easy, and I don't think anyone's come up with a solution, which is a bit of a barrier. But also just digital collectibles and so on are much easier to create and distribute than physical objects.
Will, you're back. Did you want to give us a quick introduction of yourself if you're not frozen? And pick NFTs, Nifties, or how do you pronounce it?
I definitely lean towards NFTs. Yeah, sorry about the connection issue. Yeah, so I work on a project called 0x Protocol, and basically our vision, our kind of thesis is that all forms of value are going to end up represented as tokens on public blockchains, whether it's fiat currency, stocks, bonds, all the way to like digital goods like video game items, collectibles, airline miles, everything. And back in 2017, we had just launched the first version of the protocol, and we had started to see some interesting new projects emerging that were like CryptoPunks and stuff, where they were essentially trying to create NFTs, but there wasn't really a standard that existed. But we really wanted to support these types of items because it seemed like there were a lot of interesting use cases for them. And so that's how we got sucked into the EIP721 conversation, and yeah, we're excitedly following along as the conversation progressed.
I guess jumping off that as a general question, early NFT designs were almost basically just ERC20s that use the ID that you had to sort of find some sort of rareness. Was it intentional to divert from that way? You know, because you know, with a mooncat, you have to wrap it, and I'm not sure how ethereal works, but those are all pre 721.
Yeah, I mean, this ERC20 was the impetus, right? Like, you know, it was ICO season. Everybody and their dog was raising millions of dollars selling ERC20s, and so whenever we talk about internally, we talk about the CryptoKitties project that we were working on. Inevitably, the business people would ask if they were ERC20 compatible. And as an engineer, I got very frustrated by this. I would be like, I would rant about the difference between fungibility and non-fungibility, and how the whole point of these kitties was that each one is going to be unique, and ERC20 is like, it makes it virtually impossible to keep track of that, et cetera, et cetera. And so one day I realized that was the impetus of creating 721, was it's just like, well, stop, leave me alone, right? here's a standard for non-fungible things.
And we'll get into a little bit more later, possibly for the differences of ERCs, but it is interesting because, you know, you could make a new spec, and there's new specs made all the time for tokens, but if they're not widely adopted, it kind of runs the risk of just being sort of siloed off in illiquidity, which is a huge risk for ERC 721 at the time.
Yeah, no, and it's one of the reasons why I was so grateful to these folks, right? Because you know, we had no idea that CK was going to be successful, and so having somebody who was willing to help with that while it was still something new was really important. You know, the funny coda from that is that because, like, you know, 100 people showed up to contribute to ERC 721 you know, after CryptoKitties. Obviously, it ended up as a much stronger standard because of it. But it also means that CryptoKitties is not actually properly ERC 721 compatible.
Okay, well, jumping on, just adding a little bit to that prehistory. So some of you were involved with some early projects, right? So we were just talking about a little bit of prehistory, but Decentraland before Ethereum, it was on a fork of Bitcoin called Namecoin. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, it was similar to Namecoin. I think that Namecoin was kind of like the first digital scarcity on a blockchain in the shape of an NFT. And with Decentraland before Ethereum, we did the same. We used the UTXOs to be to represent non-fungible tokens, but it was super early. I think that yeah, it's funny because we never, at the time, we didn't realize it was like a generalized thing that we could. Not even with ENS, right, Nick? You also didn't realize that ENS could make for really cool NFTs.
Yeah, I mean, in my defense, ENS was deployed before 721, but even as I was commenting on the 721 spec, it didn't really initially occur to me that, oh, hey, this thing I'm dedicating like basically all of my time to is also an NFT. You know, that took a while longer.
Yeah, rare pepes were at the time also the number one non-fungible thing. It was on another blockchain as well, I think. And you were involved with Ethereum, right? Back in the day?
Me?
Yeah. Oh, maybe I got that wrong.
If I was, I've forgotten.
Okay, cool.
On some more prehistory. So we're kind of talking about ENS, and the namespace was kind of happening in parallel to ERC 721. and Jordy was talking a little bit about his involvement with ERC721. There was also Auction House, and even, and on another chain, there was Rare Pepes. Was there any sort of highlights that anyone wants to sort of jump on and mention before we kind of move the conversation forward?
I think that Rare Pepes were more like 1155. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to mention that. No, that Rare Pepes at the time were more like 1155. There were multiple issues of one Rare Pepe, so it wasn't quite the same, like, I don't know, simplicity that I liked from 721. That's just.
And for those who don't know, ERC 1155 is another spec that is also well enough used. Some platforms support it. It kind of bridges the gap between ERC20 and ERC 721. So it's sort of semi-non-fungible.
Yeah, the other point I was going to bring up just about kind of the prehistory phase was that everyone in the NFT community owes a bunch of people on this call a huge debt of gratitude for the standards work that went into kind of creating 721 and agreeing upon it. I mean, without that, in Auction House, for example, there was really just two functions that were applicable to NFTs. There was the owner function to identify who owned this asset, and the set owner function to change it. And it really takes kind of the whole community and all these different use cases, be it CryptoKitties, Decentraland, ENS, all giving input on what's important to create the right safety mechanisms, the right events to make it a good developer experience, anticipating future use cases. So a lot of times the standards work goes really unheralded, but it really becomes a solid base that everyone can build on top of. I think that was a really important step that everyone took.
So then coming kind of back to now, how would, let's pick three people. How would you define NFTs to an engineer, business engineer, or someone new to the space? Tweet length. Who wants to take it? One tweet.
I'm a technical communicator, and I still don't want to do that in a tweet.
But what's funny is that I have such trouble with this question, and maybe we can go around and talk about why none of us want to do it. But the reason I have trouble with this question is because, like, what 721 was trying to do and what people call NFTs now, there's the 721 is broader, right? And you brought it up earlier, Jay, and Will touched on it as well. This idea that we could use it as a deed to a real world good, and what the current mindset of NFT is very much in the digital collectible art, right? Obviously, NBA Top Shots. We, in a sense, right, we've taken a step back, right? CryptoKitties were one of the things that was interesting about CryptoKitties is that there was something you could do with them, right? The breeding game, and what we're seeing is that a lot of people, just that notion of fashion or art or self-expression that comes from just being like, hey, I can express myself by owning these things. That's actually enough to do a lot of stuff with. I hope that's not the end of NFTs, though. I hope we get to do a lot more of the interesting stuff that people have been talking about. I kind of want to hand it off to Will here because he was talking about the vision of like everything being on chain, and I'm curious how much you've thought about that in the problems of syncing up, as Nick was saying, syncing up physical ownership with NFT ownership, and what would hold precedence, and how that might work.
Sure. So yeah, just to make sure I'm understanding. So the question is, in a world where like physical items or assets are represented as, or ownership over those physical items is represented as like a non-fungible token or something on a public blockchain, how is that relationship enforced? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you see any moves towards that, right? Because I think it's easy to imagine that it should exist, but as engineers, it's easy for us to see like why it doesn't exist because it's so hard. And I'm wondering if you're seeing any movement in that direction, or if you have any ideas of how that might work.
Yeah, there are a few interesting projects in the past that have worked on more or less like providing a way to custody assets that exist outside of the blockchain world and represent them as tokens in the blockchain world. not specifically items that are non-fungible, but for example, like what is now called like trust token. Their initial approach to their initial kind of idea was, how do we take assets, put them into a legal trust in an enforceable way, and then issue a digital representation of those assets that are sitting in a legal trust on a blockchain, and set it up in a way where, you know, there's like a third-party custodian, and, you know, they'll redeem these digital assets for the physical assets that are owned in that legal trust. And I think like their approach right now is they're doing this for like fiat currencies. And so similar to like USDC, for example. And there have also been some like attempts to tokenize like real estate. But I think like the early attempts to tokenize real estate it's been challenging for them to find usage, because like, just because a token, like a real estate token, is on the blockchain, it doesn't mean like blockchain users are like experts in real estate. And so you have no idea if like buying a piece of this house makes any sense just because it's a token. Like, is it actually a good deal or not? Which is kind of ironic, because people will put hundreds of thousands of dollars into like NFTs that have, you know, arbitrary value. But yeah, definitely a lot of room for the space to progress.
I'll reluctantly have a go at the original question, if that's still on the table.
Please, yes.
I think that ultimately NFTs represent ownership, and what that represents can depend on the particular project. And it's usually easier to explain with an example. Like, in the physical world, I might buy a limited run print of 1 of 25 from an artist, and they number them in the corner, and I have fair assurance that it's limited because the artist's reputation's riding on that. And NFTs allow them to do something similar with digital art, which normally is unlimited, and then I can sell my limited print to someone else if I wish. I think that sort of thing encapsulates NFT ownership.
Okay, so I guess it would be fair to say that anything that needs to be defined more in, I guess, in finite, well, something that has to be finite. Well, then that is, ERC20 doesn't.
Well, digital property would be the 2-word version, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, fungibility versus non-fungibility, I mean, it's generally yes, but not exclusively.
I'll take another stab at it. An NFT is a certificate of authenticity issued by the author of some virtual good that you want to keep scarce. Scarcity is the most important part, because in general, everything digital, GIFs or PNGs or whatever, they can be copied as many times as you like, and an NFT gives you some sort of link to the original owner that can prove that you have like some virtual asset. I don't know.
Yeah, I would like to just to point the similarity between fungible and non-fungible tokens, that at the end is the social contract. We accept fungible tokens because, or even we accept real money, you know, just a piece of paper. Why we accept that this is $50 or whatever, and we accept that? Well, because there is a social contract. People really accept that. It can be the social contract forced by a law, or it can be just because we accept that. And NFTs is a little bit the same. NFTs, they have all the properties that registry and other things and can be transferred. It has a lot of very good technical properties, but at the end is the acceptance. The acceptance that why the people accept that the owner of this NFT is actually the real owner of the physical object. At the moment that there is more people that accept that a given NFT is matched with the physical object, when there is this social acceptance, then is when the NFT has the value. The interesting thing here is, because you mentioned the legal part, I agree. So probably the most innovative things about NFTs is the legality that's behind and that's trying to rise right now. But CryptoKitties, they were nothing legal there. It just people just accept, the community just accept that the owner of this piece of CryptoKitty just belonged to the person, and there was an acceptance, and you can show to your friends. And there was something that were beyond the legality. But it's just a proof that when there is a community that accepts the NFTs as the ownership, as the real ownership that's behind, is when, well, it starts having value and becomes having interest.
So we're lucky ultimately that the spec gained legitimacy within art enough for social pressures to maintain its definition.
Yeah, we need to see that. So people, if people accepts NFTs, then you get all the good things of NFTs. You can sell it, you can do auctions, you can work in NFTs. So, but and then is when it really becomes the value, and accepting. I think that people in general have an incentive to accept that because of the properties of the blockchain itself. So this is something that we will see more in the future, because there is an interest for people to accept that. So the social contract, something that's very difficult to understand at the beginning. Why I need to trust that the person, this is just a digital, it's just a number, it's a digital asset. But at the moment that you accept that, and the moment that there is a community, and there is a society that accepts that, then the value is when just exponentially grows.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
value is fundamentally a human construct, right? And nothing can have value unless we agree it. And I just think, the first thing that blockchains did, right, was they created a Schelling point for value. And obviously, with money-like things that came first. But the reality is that, there is no word in English for non-fungible, right? There's fungible and you can negate it, but that's because almost everything is non-fungible. And so just, I mean, it's funny, like, what is an NFT? It's a thing you can own, right? Like, that's literally the definition of an NFT. It's a thing you can own. And like, well, what can you do it? Well, you can stop owning it, right? You can give it to somebody else, but that's, in a sense, that's all it is. But when you think about what a token is, ERC20 or even Bitcoin, well, what is that? Well, it's just a thing you can own. And you can own part of it and you can own a bunch of them. But like, at the end of the day, the real importance of it comes from the importance that we as humans give it.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. Those are a lot of things that I think a lot of people think about. And to your point, bringing it back to like, what is blockchain? Well, it is ultimately, as you said, it's a Schelling point for universal value. You just need to have, and it's really good at finding a mechanism to corral people around certain things. And these various sinks of value ultimately all kind of come down to ETH itself, and it really deconstructs our notions of what we think of as value, because we've been so far removed for what value is to what monetary value is. And so that's kind of one of the things that keeps bringing it back, that I think is always really interesting. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about the future. Let's kind of get back on that. So before the advent of marketplaces, there was stuff like Auction House, then OpenSea. Did anyone really have an idea of what an NFT exchange might look like? Something similar to D-Markets? And then on that, did anyone foresee the trend of fractionalization, like B20 indexes, indexes NFTX, and how does that change the value? So it's kind of a broader discussion point.
Well, back in the day, we all had to create our own marketplaces, right? Together with CryptoKitties, we did that with the Decentraland. Will had an early version of a general NFT marketplace, but also CryptoPunks, they also had to make their own marketplace. It was all very custom made back in the day.
Yeah, even Mooncats, like they have their own little marketplace built in because there wasn't enough legitimacy around any one particular marketplace. And now we're starting to see, marketplaces themselves start to fraction off into various other forms.
And I think the fact that that metadata was an optional part of 721 reflects people's expectations around that, this might be useful for some things, but the expectation was largely that like the sites interacting with the NFT would already know, how to fit like implementation specific details, and therefore that would be specific marketplaces and so on. And I'm sure no one would have ruled out things like OpenSea, but I think the expectation was more that, you build an NFT and you build a way to trade them as well.
One of the coolest features. So we built in support for just plain vanilla ERC721 trades into 0x protocol. But my teammate Michael built probably one of the coolest things that I think we've ever built into the protocol, and it was the ability for someone to trade any arbitrary NFT that had a specific set of properties. And so one of the issues with NFTs are that the lack of fungibility makes these markets extremely inefficient and it makes them not liquid. Fungibility is the equivalence of liquidity. And with some, if you think about I want to buy a house, there are so many different properties associated with that house. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how much square footage, when was it built? All of these are different parameters that you have to that you can filter by. But what was really cool with this system that my teammate built into the third version of 0x is someone could say, I will buy any CryptoKitty that has these on-chain properties for this price. And what that does is it creates a very liquid market for different types of NFTs that have different sets of properties. And I thought I still kind of think that that's the future of NFT marketplaces, that people will reduce the number of dimensions that go into pricing an asset into the most important ones. For example, how many parcels are on a Decentraland? How many what is the square footage of this Decentraland parcel, for example?
It kind of feels like that's the order book equivalent of an NFT index's liquidity pool. So it's a similar idea where you say this pool will accept anything that meets these requirements, and you can put one in and take one out, and so forth.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the. Sorry, go ahead, Jordy.
Go, please.
Well, I was just really surprised by how, and obviously it's because of exactly what Will said about liquidity and the friction involved in trying to find things. But I was really surprised at how quickly people went from non-fungible to well, how do we make this fungible? How do we make this more fungible, right? One of my favorite projects that came out of the work that the community did on top of CryptoKitties is Wrapped Kitties. Which is literally just a smart contract, and anybody can put a kitty in there, and then you get a fungible token, and that's an ERC20 token that you can trade however you want, and you can then burn that token to get a random kitty out. And I think that's a really interesting idea. And I know the community. I don't know if it ever actually got built, but the community looked at the idea of creating different tiers of those and saying well, what if we did wrapped Gen 0 kitties, or what if we did wrapped kitties with the a fast cooldown or something like that. And so you could have sort of different tiers. And I think it's very interesting. And I mean, part of what's fun about it is that you can slice it in all these different ways. And hopefully we can find a way for people to set up markets that let them, sort of decide what's important to them.
Yeah, I think with everything in smart contract land, kind of the least inspiring, least interesting thing is starting by just mapping physical world or Web 2 world onto this. So like, how do we recreate eBay for NFTs, or how do we have this NFT represent, a physical baseball card or something is where it begins. But then when you recognize, well, these are actually digital goods, they're kind of native to the internet, if you will, you can talk about these, associating these kind of liquidity properties to them. You can talk about fractional ownership. You can talk about embedding economics on transfer. You can really think about how that changes things, and the type of experimentation that you just described that took place on early CryptoKitties is, again, just the beginning, and there's probably so much more to come.
Yeah, using NFTs as collateral for for borrowing platform, or another ERC20 generation, it's one option. Also the borrowing NFTs, just all these internet of the world of just lending objects and exploiting objects. No? They have an NFT that's an apartment, and then you get the rights. You can sell the rights of renting this apartment. It's like you can do lots of things. Insurance on top of that. It's like when you start thinking. At the end is when you put the objects in a smart contract platform, and you put the world in a smart contract platform is when, well, just a full set of contracts can rise, and imagination is free. It's like a lot of things you can do.
Yes, indeed. I remember back in the day there was a lot of discussion about like the gas fees, and there were some people that wanted to do boxing and unboxing of NFTs, like NFTs that can own other NFTs, and I don't know. Like I think that we did some of that with the Centerland with the States. It's kind of like an NFT that can own other NFTs. But the gas prices for managing a lot of land together were going to be super expensive. So we try to do that as soon as possible, so that we will become the good citizens of Ethereum. But yeah, I think that also there was a tool by 0x to do that. Like boxing a lot of NFTs together. It was. Yeah, because after CryptoKitties with the clogging of the network, it was super important for everyone to realize that, this gas stuff is going to be important.
So it looks like we have about a few minutes left. So I'm going to leave with the last question being, is there a concern for the file store for NFT assets? What does the present and future look like for decentralized storage of the underlying JPEG, for example? So quick answer, couple minutes. Is there a quick answer?
I think it's a valid criticism and concern. A lot of stuff is hosted on centralized services, and fortunately, though, the metadata system and so on permits something like automated archiving, and I would love to see a web.archive.org type project that just aims to archive all NFTs, because if you can do that, you can preserve them for all time and you can ensure they keep working.
I think that at the end, data availability is going to be a reality very soon in the blockchains. Ethereum 2.0 mainly is going to be a data availability platform. Filecoin is already a data availability platform. So, well, maybe now is problematic, but I think that in the mid-future, I don't know, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, putting a lot of data on chain, I don't know which chain, but putting a lot of that on chain is going to be a reality. This is part of the scaling strategy that is there. So to have roll apps stuff. That's one thing. But the other thing is the data availability, and that availability is in the way of being solved.
Yeah, and I think there's a distinction between data that it makes sense for smart contracts to have access to, right? So Will's point about being able to put a bid on a particular CryptoKitty with a particular gene, that's only possible because the genes were on chain. If we had stored the genetic information in a Filecoin like solution, then there would have been no way for the smart contract to do that. On the other hand, there's no reason for like something like a Top Shot that literally has a video. Putting that on chain, no one's going to write a smart contract that goes and tries to figure out whether the fifth frame of that video actually contains the player it claims to, right? And so I think that there's going to be, we need to have more data that is processable on chain, and then we need to have a robust and easy to use way for people to put the data in decentralized storage. Because I know that I don't think anyone's opposed to it, right? Like NBA has even told us that they don't mind doing it. It's a lot of work right now, and it's traditionally not been a thing that has impacted the people's acceptance of the platform. And so it's something that we're definitely looking into and we want to move towards. But it's a matter of getting these tools to be mature, and then I think we'll get there.
On a final note, did we expect the CryptoKitty spam that spam the network end up being what it was now? I mean, it's a few years since then.
It wasn't spam.
I didn't think it was spam.
Thanks,
I didn't think it was spam. I thought it was innovation.
We had 3 meetings, each of which the topic was, what do we do if not enough people use this? And we didn't have a single meeting about what if too many people use this. So certainly we didn't expect it.